Hey guys, this is John Bartlett from Brentwood Growth. Hope everyone is doing well. We're doing another episode in our continual series on sell or scale. And I'm pleased to have with me Doug Hipple and Tom Basch from Infinity Home Services. Guys, thanks for joining.
Thanks, John.
And where are you guys calling in from?
Yeah, so I'm in Maryland, in between Baltimore and DC.
And I work out of our headquarters in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, cool. Well, that's great. So to sort of get us going here, tell us briefly about y'all's background and how you guys got together, and a little bit about the firm, and a little bit about sectors that you guys are interested in investing in and partnering in.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick intro of myself. I'll let Doug do the same, and then I'll share some more about Infinity Home Services and what we're doing. But personally, I started in roofing 25 years ago when a family friend was looking for some help with a roofing project, and that turned into a summer job. And learned the trade, learned how to install. Got a crew together, started subcontracting out for some larger contractors in my market in New York. Ended up going to college, ended up joining the Marine Corps. When I got out, I took a job as a project manager with a roofing company. That transitioned into sales. Did that for many years before joining a small home improvement technology company. I was there for several years, and I went to another one where I ran strategic partnerships for 4.5 years, and came over to Infinity Home Services about a year ago. After some of the connections I had made, crisscrossing the country in the home improvement technology side, those guys had partnered with Infinity Home Services, and I had really respected them and their decisions, and looked up to them. And so when I saw what was going on in the space and saw their decisions and knew how much they vetted something, I really respected what they were doing and was excited to join.
Well, cool. Doug, what about you?
Tom is too humble, John. So when we hired Tom about 9 months ago, and he joined the team, and we posted on like LinkedIn and stuff saying, we're excited to have Tom Basch join IHS. There were so many people that reached out, both existing brands that are part of IHS and just other folks in the industry that reached out, and they were like, man, I can't believe you guys got Tom to join IHS.
That's
like
awesome,
he's
man.
A kingpin in the industry. So we're thrilled to have Tom as a part of the team. Unlike Tom, I'm new to roofing. So I've been with IHS for coming on 2 years. This is my first foray into roofing, but it's been a great ride the past 2 years. I've loved every minute of it. My background is more traditional corporate development, M&A. I worked for a large publicly traded organization for about 8 years in their corporate development group, growing from an analyst. And when I left, I was in charge of M&A for 6 of their business groups across North America. Did 17 acquisitions around the world when I was there. So that was a ton of fun. The company grew from $1.5 billion to $5 billion in revenue during the 8 years that I was there. And it just got a bit too bureaucratic. There's too much red tape. It wasn't as much fun as it was in the early days. And I got a call from a recruiter for a really exciting opportunity to come build out the M&A department for Infinity Home Services. They told me it was roofing. I'm like, I don't know about that. And I met the team and fell in love with Josh Sparks, our CEO and founder, and the rest of the team here. And really our mission, which is really what differentiates IHS from a lot of the other folks in this space. We were one of the early movers. IHS was founded in September of 2021, but our roots date back to the late 1990s when our CEO and founder Josh Sparks founded Infinity Exteriors, and he was a subcontractor for several years in the residential roofing space here in southeastern Wisconsin. And he took a job that really changed the course of his life. He was a subcontractor. It was like a Thursday or a Friday, showed up to this really small house. It was like a 10 square layover. It was going to take him a couple hours to re-roof that. And there was this sweet old lady named Betty who owned the house. She was a widow. Her husband was a Marine, and Josh was a was in the service as well, and she saw Josh's tattoos. They, started chatting. Like a lot of homeowners, invited him in for coffee, gave him some cookies, and finally, after an hour, he's like, "Hey, I need to get up on your roof and do what you're paying me here to do." So he got up there, he pounded out the job, and the company that he was subcontracting for had recently changed their policies. The subcontractors after the installation were responsible for presenting the invoice and collecting payment. So this was back in the early 2000s at this point, and Josh went out to his truck, got the invoice, and it was $10,000. And he, about fell over. His material was probably $300 to $400. His labor was another $300 to $400. And he's like, "There's no way, the company I'm working for is charging this much to do this roof. There must be a mistake." So he went back to the office, talked to the office lady. She, chastised him for not collecting the payment. And he's like, "Hey, something must be wrong in this invoice." So he went and talked to the boss, and the boss very simply said, "Josh, you'll understand someday. You're pretty young, but some people just have to pay more than others, and that's just the way business works." That didn't sit well with Josh. He felt horrible that they were ripping off this sweet old lady. He had a couple of choice words for that guy that I'm not going to repeat. And Josh quit on the spot, called his wife, and said, "Hey, I want you to take out everything that we have in our savings right now and start running some advertisements. There's a better way to do this. We need to protect these type of homeowners." So that's the day that Josh coined what is still today our mission statement, which is to save our communities from unscrupulous contractors. And that's really what guides us as we're looking for other contractors across North America. We're in Canada as well. We're looking for strong contractors that want to do right by the customer. They value taking care of their customer. They value taking care of their people. And if you do those two things, we believe the profit's going to follow, and it'll be a great investment.
That's a great story, and it certainly level sets the company in terms of what the values are and what the mission of the company is. How many companies, since Josh started the business, how many companies have you guys partnered with through the years?
Yeah, so today we're at 25 brands. A couple in Canada, a couple down in South Florida, a few in the Pacific Northwest, and then several kind of in the Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, Northeast states.
And these are primarily residential, exclusively residential?
Yeah, exactly. And even more specifically, we're focused on retail residential roofing.
Okay. So when you're looking at a business, what makes a business attractive to you? What sort of characteristics are you looking for? What are some of the key sort of components that they need to have, either from a revenue standpoint or from a revenue mix standpoint or from a margin standpoint or from a management infrastructure standpoint? What really makes a business attractive to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we're looking for people that are good people with a good culture, folks that have the right values, and have the same, mission and vision that we do, right? So we look for alignment there from a cultural perspective first. But after that, like I mentioned, retail, residential focused, revenue over 10 million, preferably over 20 million, good EBITDA margins, steady historical growth, low advertising spend, attractive market, those sort of things. And then, long time in business as well. And then I think more specifically to us, again, a higher percentage of revenue from roofing, a very low, single digits revenue from insurance. Same with like new construction, limited exposure there, and low exposure to commercial roofing.
Yeah, and if Doug, do you have other things to add?
Commercial, so
yeah,
we'll do some steep slope commercial work, multifamily HOA. That doesn't scare us. That's kind of right down the center of our fairway. Where we don't focus is low slope or flat roofing, especially large projects.
Right.
It's just not an area of expertise for us. The other thing that we're really focused on, Tom mentioned, length of time in business. Again, we're seeking to partner with folks that run really great businesses that are kind of pillars in their community. So we heavily value and evaluate what the strength of that brand is in the local market. What is their reputation? What are people saying about them online? What's their Google review profile, Better Business Bureau? When we talk to manufacturers and distribution, are they someone that manufacturers and distribution readily say, hey, if you want to get into, Baltimore, Maryland, you got to check out this company. They do things the right way. That's really what we're focused on is, that culture fit, because at the end of the day, if you don't have culture fit, it makes it really hard to live with each other post-close.
How do you deal with companies that are in parts of the country where there might be a lot of hailstorm events, tornado events, hurricane events, and so they're not storm chasers per se, but just by nature of where they are geographically and how the climate sort of kicks up from year to year, there might be a component of the insurance storm work that can cause sort of the revenue can swing up in a couple of years if there are a couple of big storms, and then it can sort of level that back off. How do you think about those companies that are maybe in that hail belt, tornado belt, hurricane belt area?
Yeah, admittedly, that's a tough one, right? So I think you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of volatility there. When we're looking at those businesses and trying to figure out how to value them, it's tough because there are some pretty large peaks and valleys on their performance. So sometimes, you can take like a normalized EBITDA, but some owners, won't accept that or they don't like that. From a macro strategic level, about 10 to 15% of our revenue is storm or insurance driven. We certainly understand, looking at the broader market, when we look at ARMA data, which is the Association for Shingle Manufacturing, a little over half of this industry is just traditional retail work. So that's really where our focus is. Anywhere from 25 to 40% in a given year can be storm over the last 5 to 7 years. The average storm-driven demand is about 30% of the industry. So it's certainly, something that we're focused on, but we don't have a strong desire to get into those heavy storm-driven markets unless it's with someone that, fits us really, really well from a culture and business perspective.
Got it. So you've you said a moment ago that you guys have done 25 partnership investment acquisitions, and when you look at the founders within the 25 that you've done, and you sort of look at the conversations that you're having out there, the owners themselves, are they guys in their 60s that are looking to sell, and there's a pretty well-defined timeline that they're looking to transition out? Are there guys in their 50s that are trying to pull some chips off the table and stay involved? Are there guys in their 30s and 40s that are wanting to build an empire and they want somebody to partner with and help them build that empire? Where would you say the buyer profile falls in terms of where they are in life?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I think we see a lot of our brand presidents, the former entrepreneurs, the 22 to 25 are still, continuing to run their businesses here. And so I think what we, see work really well are, those entrepreneurs that still have a lot of gas in the tank and want to continue to really throw fuel on the fire that they've built within their business, and just looking for additional support and resources to help do that, while still, being able to build a cultural rich team and grow that business.
So it sort of spans the spectrum in terms of older guys that are looking to transition out and younger guys that are looking to partner and really build something special. So you can meet potential founders sort of based upon what it is that they're trying to accomplish from a life standpoint.
Yeah, our bread and butter are folks, like Tom mentioned, they have a desire to continue the local business, their local brand, but they want to be a part of something larger. They have visions to grow their business, but they maybe need some help with sales process, evaluating technology solutions, helping to create a succession plan. Maybe they want to retire in 3 to 5 years. They're not ready to hang it up yet, but they want help in finding that number two and training that number two to eventually take over. So when we look at our 25 brands, 22 of them are still run by the original entrepreneurs, and they're having a blast. One thing that we do really well, that we're very proud of, is we get together, as a group. Our brand presidents, the former entrepreneurs, have a ton of interaction. We get together quarterly. We were just down in Houston last month to do our annual strategic leadership summit, where we had all of the brands together doing best practice sharing, going through some workshops, learning, from each other to be able to take those incremental learnings back and distill them down to their team and, and continue to grow their business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Why has there been so much recent interest in the last 3 or 4 years from institutional investors in the roofing space? What from a macro standpoint, what do you think is driving this swell of interest right now?
Yeah, I think number one, you have a ton of dry powder that is sitting out there with private equity firms that they need to deploy. Deal flow was slower during COVID, so they just accumulated cash that they now need to put to work because they raise money from their investors. They can't give that money back. That's the kiss of death for a private equity fund. So they need to deploy it. So I think that's what's driving part of it. The other part is private equity is looking to get into new industries. HVAC has been rolled up, for the better part of a decade. There's a ton of interest right now in general in, Wall Street, so to speak, with the residential service firms. And I think not a lot of people realize that, roofing was an attractive industry to operate in. People, roofers have known it for decades, but more professional buyers have avoided it. Infinity was really one of the first businesses to actually transact. So we were founded in September of 2021.
You mentioned
between Josh and a lower middle market firm called North Branch Capital. We grew extremely quickly with North Branch. We partnered with 9 other roofing contractors during our first year of ownership with North Branch, and we outgrew North Branch's fund size. So that's something all PE firms, have different sizes that they'll invest in businesses at, and we got too large too quickly for North Branch. So we went back out to market, and unfortunately, a lot of PE firms in that process, saw our marketing materials and say, hey, wow, this is a pretty attractive space. It looks like, you can execute a roll-up strategy within roofing. And now a lot of folks, have jumped into it because they realize that it's highly fragmented. It's good margins. It's pretty, stable business. If you're not in storm work, if you're in traditional retail work, it's, very stable, recession resilient. So it's a good industry to be in if you need to, invest your money somewhere.
Got it. That makes sense. You talked about younger founders that are looking to partner and grow, and the characteristics of that leads me to deal structures. And so when you find a company that's attractive and you guys generally agree to what the headline number is that the business is valued at, how do you think about the structure underneath the headline number in terms of the cash component, seller note component, an earnout component, a rollover equity component? How are you sort of structuring the transaction under the broad number?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. It's flexible, right? So we have been doing this, for a while. We have 25 brands
Right.
under our platform, under Infinity. So we will work with the sellers on what their objectives are. We
Right.
like to see a strong rollover portion. We like to see a minimum of 20%. We're really proud to say, on average, people roll more than that. So last year, of the 8 partnerships that we made, our average rollover amount was 27% of enterprise value on a deal, because people see the benefit in investing back in Infinity Home Services and being a part of our long-term growth story. So that's a typical component of all of the deals that we structure, is that rollover piece. And then certainly earnouts can be a helpful valuation tool if you need to bridge a gap somewhere. There are pros and cons to earnouts. It's something that we deploy when appropriate and when necessary.
Let me go back to the 27% number. And so I want to be sure that I heard that correctly. So let's assume we've got a business that's worth $10 million. You're saying of the 10 million, 7.3 might be some sort of combination of cash, a seller note, and earnout. So that gets us to the 73%. And then that other 27% that you're referring to as rollover, the existing founder is not selling that piece, but he's taking that equity equivalent and leaving that in the holding company. Am I explaining that properly?
Yep, that's correct. And one point of clarification, I know some folks, will implement seller notes. That's common on smaller structures. We have plenty of cash, so we.
Yeah, it's not like you're scrambling. Yeah. And then if a seller is leaving that 2.7 in, rolling that 2.7 over, what you hear people talk about the second bite of the apple. And so how does that actually materialize? What's the rough time frame that 2.7 stays in? And then how does that get returned to the founder? And then what sort of growth? And I'm not asking you to give projections here, but broadly speaking, what sort of return is the founder anticipating off that amount that is sort of left in the business?
Yeah, it's a great topic and something that should be discussed more, because especially for entrepreneurs who are looking, to partner with a larger organization to have the ability to roll equity, back into that platform, it can be a fantastic long-term wealth generation tool for that owner and their family. So when you talk about that second bite of the apple, oftentimes you get, a third bite and sometimes a fourth bite as well, which is really what makes this attractive. So when we look at Infinity Home Services and what we think we can generate in terms of return for our shareholders, we think we can, drive above market returns. I think typical, private equity returns are like 2 to 3 times, which is really strong. So when you look at the time horizon that return is normally realized, that's, typically 5 years. Could be as short as 3, could be as long as 7. But when you look at, a 300% return over, let's say, 5 years, that's a fantastic annualized return percentage, much better than what you could do, in the public markets. Again, we believe that, Infinity is building a fantastic business that is here to stand for generations, and we will get, an above market return for our business when that time comes. But that also comes from careful planning by our board, our capital partners, and our executive team to make sure, we're growing this business the right way. And there's a lot of long-term growth there in the future. I think the SRS model is a fantastic example of what that second and third bite of the apple could look like. So SRS is a building materials distribution company. They went through 3 turns or 3 rounds of private equity before they sold to Home Depot for $18 billion. And each of those 3 turns of private equity, they returned between 3 to 4 times, their investment back to their partners. So if you were in that first round of private equity with SRS, you're one of the early people to get in, you rolled $1 million, that 1 million grows 3 times to 3. You take your 2 million of gain out, you can leave your 1 million in, and that grows again 3 times. You take 2 million out, leave that 1 million in, and it grows again. And all of a sudden, for a $1 million investment, you have a $9 to $10 million gain over like, a 10 to 15 year period, which is a fantastic return.
Right.
And that's the way that we're structured as well. So all of our rollover partners have that, opportunity to stay invested in IHS for the long term throughout our growth journey.
I guess in a way to think about it is I mean, they've got to invest the money somewhere, and they're reinvesting the money back into a sector that they're very familiar with, and they're a part of that fund group, if you will, and that fund group has investments in 25 other companies. So it's a way to stay involved in the same sector and diversify what your investment holdings are in a way. So it's a great way to I mean, the money has to be invested somewhere, right?
Exactly. I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett. One thing that he always says is you have to invest within your circle of competence.
Right.
So what do you know better than, the industry that you've spent, most likely the better part of your life being a part of?
Right.
And again, it's not all of your net worth. If you're selling your business for $10 million, you have $7.5 million for simple math that
you've got
you're
to
going to
squirrel
go
away somewhere else, and so it's there.
Exactly, put in T-bills, put in the public part, you're going to invest in other spots, and then you have a certain, asset class, IHS that you want to maintain an investment in as well that is going to drive above market returns.
That's awesome. Okay, so we found a company that you're interested in. We agreed with the valuation. We agreed with the deal structure. Your LOI was accepted. Now we go through the quality of earnings, the due diligence, the legal component. What does that process look like, and how long does that process typically take?
Yeah, so typically that'll take 90 days on average, and it's really dependent on the seller. As you know, how quickly can the seller provide information? So one thing that always makes it a lot easier is if the seller can start gathering some of that information pretty early, if they know that they want to entertain conversations, have their financials readily available, have all of their legal documents, contracts, articles of incorporation, payroll files, have all of those things, fairly readily available, because any buyer is going to submit to them a request list, and it's going to contain, maybe 100, different lines in an Excel file of different pieces of information that the buyer will need to review and evaluate. So the quicker that a seller can provide that information, it makes it easier for us to go through it, because we have an army of people, reviewing files, conducting diligence, and we can move very fast if, the seller is able to move fast. If they need to slow down, then we can slow down. So we always work to match their speed.
Not to do a shameless plug, but if the seller is working with an advisor like Brentwood's helping them manage that quality of earnings and due diligence process to take some of the day-to-day grind, and so we can take some of the pressure off of them. So it takes about 90 days to get through that process. Employees, at what point in the process do you guys recommend, and do you see owners telling their management team, involving their management team through the due diligence process and announcing to the employees? When does that occur typically?
I've seen it vary, John, based on, the different companies and who's involved and sort of their comfortability.
What's the earliest you've seen them tell employees, and what's the latest you've seen them tell employees?
The earliest is before I even have had a call with them, an intro call, right? The team is aware that they're exploring, this is an option, and the team is certainly aware of that. Companies have kept, at least the management layer involved in a lot of, especially when they're involved in like diligence
Right.
as you talked about.
Yeah.
And then others, right, where it's post-close.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Our CEO, Josh Sparks, will go on site and do a welcome with the team. And so they'll find out at that point.
And after the deal closes, how do things change as far as the employees are concerned? What looks and feels differently for them day one after close, and then what looks and feels different as far as the owner is concerned?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's funny, as we are getting closer to closing on a deal, when we're like 1 week or 2 weeks out, you always have that emotion from the owner where they're, embarking on this new journey. They're excited, but they're a bit worried. And I always tell folks, you still got to come to work tomorrow. We're gonna wire
Right.
you a bunch of money, but like you still gotta
Right.
come to work. The sign on the door is still the same.
Right.
You're still in the building. You're still driving this ship. You now just have a lot of resources to support you. Being
Mhm.
an owner, being an entrepreneur of a business is really lonely. There's a lot that rests on your shoulders. So a huge benefit of partnering with a company like IHS is you now have other folks who are experts in their certain niches. You now have an HR team that are experts in recruiting, they're expert in employment matters, training that you have access to that as an individual business owner you'd have never been able to afford that level of talent. You have a chief marketing officer with, people under her that have deep expertise in digital SEO strategy, lead generation capabilities, graphic design, things like that, that you now have access to as a partner of IHS that you didn't before. So from an owner standpoint, you now report to someone, which
Right.
is a little bit of a change, but we have a strong philosophy, and it's really driven from the top down from Josh that he wants, decision making done at the local level. We're
Right.
partnering with really strong business owners that understand their local markets, they
Right.
understand their customers. So
Right.
as long as their business continues to perform, we give them a lot of local autonomy to make decisions to drive and scale their business because at the end of the day, they rolled equity back into IHS and they
Right.
want their business to do well, just like they want, all of their other peers who are running the various brands at IHS to do
And
well as well.
if you look at if you made a list of all the responsibilities that the owner had, is it and maybe they're, if you put them in categories, maybe there are 25 different categories that he's responsible for in some form or fashion. Is it a way for him to sort of clean up what that to-do list looks like, and if there's some roles and responsibilities that he doesn't feel like he's very good at or he doesn't particularly enjoy, there's a way to reassign some of those so that he can really focus on the areas of the business that he feels like he enjoys the most and brings the most value to? Is there a way to sort of change what his job description looks like a bit?
Yeah, it's a great way to phrase that. So we have regional structures that support all of the brands.
Right.
So we work, with each brand kind of on a case by case basis. A lot
Right.
of these folks are responsible for, let's say, insurance. So
Right.
we take all that, the insurance kind of burden off of these brands.
Right.
Um, we are not coming in though, and again, peeling pieces out of the business and saying, okay, we're now going to handle your accounting, we're now going to handle your marketing. We
Right.
still want that stuff, operate at the local level, but we work with the brand president, the entrepreneurs, to spend more time strategically driving their business and
Mhm.
help pull themselves out of being in the weeds, which is something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, is because they wear so many hats, so many things run through them. Now they have a person at IHS
Right.
that can be the middle person instead of having an HR item have to go to that entrepreneur. They have a regional HR person
Right.
that person can work with, and they can
Right.
pull some things off their to-do list.
Great. Great. Makes sense. And what about the employees? What changes as far as the employees are concerned? Does their does their comp dramatically change? Do their benefits dramatically change? How is that impacted after the business sells?
We're very sensitive to that. So there is, virtually no change for the employees. If there is a change, it's on the positive side. So as a part of diligence, we evaluate what their benefits plan looks like. And if we push them over to the IHS benefits plan, we make sure that it's going to be a net positive to bring them over. If not, we'll leave them on their local benefits plan and then reassess moving them over at a later date when it is positive. But that's a big factor, is, the employment side. This is a people business, so we, worked very hard in diligence and work with that owner to make sure, joining IHS is an overwhelmingly positive experience for the entire organization.
Got it. If an owner is thinking about having a conversation like this, with a group like yours, what's the thing that you guys would encourage him to think about and have some answers in his head that maybe he hadn't been told or hasn't thought of before he begins to go down this journey?
It's a great question. Yeah. I think what, one of the things we look for is, we're having a conversation. One of the telltale signs that it may be a good cultural fit for us is when they ask, what happens to my people? Mm-hmm. So to see that vested interest in their people, it's really important. And so on the flip side of that, it's really important that the owners are vetting, who are they making a partnership with, and what do they want out of that partnership? Is it a true partnership? Where they're going to continue to be able to grow and build and keep their people and provide, maybe upward mobility into different roles and positions. And so encourage that owner to really ask those type of questions is, what happens to my people? What happens to my team? What does this look like, post acquisition? And what's my role in the business? There's a lot of groups out there, a lot of different strategies. And so making sure that, what that owner wants is in alignment with who they're looking at making a partnership with.
Got it. Doug, anything to add?
No. It's really important for them to, I think, determine what they want to do after. To Tom's point, there are, all sorts of folks out there interested in partnering with good roofing businesses. Some want to just partner with the brand and they'll parachute their own management team in and try to run it. Mm-hmm. Some, want that owner to stay involved for a period of time and just want to support that owner in whatever way the owner needs to be supported. So it's really important. You can get caught up in having conversations with a lot of different buyers, and we see this all the time. We're talking to someone, and at the beginning of the conversation, they're maybe really burnt out. They want to retire and they want to be done in like 3 to 6 months. They don't want to stay on. And then after we make it, pretty well known that our strategy is to continue with the existing owner for, 3 to 5 years, all of a sudden at the end of the conversation, the owner's like, oh, well, maybe I'd be willing to stay on for 3 years. It's like, you're just telling us what we want to hear. You need to be really resolute in the type of deal that you want and what does success in a partnership look like for you. And then you can find a buyer that will match those needs.
Will meet those needs. Right. Well, that's good advice. So let's say there's an owner out there that's not ready to begin the conversation today, but they're thinking maybe 2 years out or 5 years out, and they want to be sure that they're working on the right areas of the business, so that when it comes time to have a conversation with a group like yours, they've got the right pieces in place from a management standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, from a financial standpoint. What are the things that, maybe a couple of things that you would really encourage them to focus on over the next 2 to 5 years to prepare the business in the best shape to make it attractive to guys like you?
John, I think one of the biggest things I see is just business owners knowing their numbers, and having a healthy grasp on what those are. There's a lot of business owners that are running cash accounting, and so the way that they're accounting for deposits and work in progress, some of those things, they don't have great visibility into the health of the business.
Right.
And so I think focusing on that area is certainly going to be beneficial for them, as well as the other thing I've heard when I talk to companies that are maybe a little bit smaller and looking to grow, they're taking on way too many types of projects, and so they're just saying yes to every different opportunity that comes their way. And I think for these owners to be more focused and disciplined in the projects that they take on and the risk that they take on, be beneficial to their growth.
Great. That's good advice. Doug, anything to add?
I think the other aspect of that is just having a clear operating structure. So, if you have a mix of 1099 and W-2, employees, like if all of your sales team is 1099, that's not going to be attractive to most buyers. They'll want to convert those employees to W-2. So go ahead and do some of that legwork ahead of time to make your business a bit, more ready to sell or to partner with someone. The other thing is, looking at your sales process and your sales organization. If the owner, owns a lot of those relationships, the owner's doing a lot of selling, a buyer's going to look at that and they're going to have, pretty heavy key man risk, but they're also going to say, hey, if I want you to focus on, strategic growth and driving this business, you can't be out there, running leads and selling projects. I need to hire a salesperson. So I need to now pay commission just to hit the same level of sales that you used to do. So, trying when they can, I get that it's hard, but, trying to structure your organization so you have, some successors in place. You have a cleaner organization from a sales perspective that'll always be more attractive to a potential buyer.
Yeah, reducing the owner dependency is critical, but being sure that the P&L doesn't suffer as you build the infrastructure internally, and those margins and the net cash flow and all that stays at a healthy level, and you just don't layer expenses onto the P&L just for the sake of building out a management team. It sort of defeats the purpose. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guys, this has been great. A lot of really good information, a lot of really good thoughts and ideas, and I'm sure the audience has appreciated the story that they've heard about the business and about you guys and what you guys are looking for. We'll be sure and put your contact details in the show notes, and if anyone wants to reach out to you guys directly, I assume that they can find you, and we'll put the information there where they'll on LinkedIn, or they can reach out directly. And so I'm sure you would welcome any conversations for guys that just want to have a conversation about their business to see if it's a possible fit.
Absolutely.
I certainly appreciate it. Anything 100%. Else?
Oh, I was just saying, we love to be a resource for contractors. So again, even, if people aren't ready to partner right now, but they're thinking about just trying to understand what's going on, what things they should be focused on. Maybe they're 2 to 3 years away. We love to have those conversations. At the end of the day, if it's not the right fit for us, we're happy, to make introductions to some other, folks that we think might be a good fit based on the characteristics that owner's looking for. Because there are a lot of folks doing things great, and there are some folks, not doing things so great, and we want to be a resource for contractors to help them protect what they've spent decades building, and their employees, who a lot of times are like family. So we're going to make sure they're well taken care of.
Well, that's great. That's great. Thanks so much for your time, guys. This has been awesome, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks,
Appreciate it, John.
Have a good week. Thanks, guys.